Hi there. It is currently about 1:45 on Thursday, May 25th, and I figured I'd record this now, right after we talked about this article in class cuz it's so poignant to me and personal. And I just wanted to dump all of my thoughts about this article and about queerness and community, um because it's actually something that I'm doing my senior thesis on. I'm doing my thesis on the impacts of queer community building on Twitch, and Twitch is a digital live streaming website, mainly surrounding video games, but they've started to branch out in more recent years. And my thesis is, how do you create queer community in a space that isn't always super friendly towards you? Um, there's a lot of toxic masculinity, for lack of a better word, hegemonic masculinity, all of that stuff. Within gaming spaces, there is that stereotype. And how do you combat that? How do you create a space that is safe within those systems and expectations and social norms that we face? And so that was one of the main things that this article, helped me think about and I connected to. Yeah, so basically, a queer pedagogy of friendship, queer teachings of friendship. How do you learn from your community? And I feel like that's so important, right? Because a lot of this shit isn't taught. You're not taught how to be queer in school. You're not, most people are not taught about queerness in general in, K through 12, at least in my experience and from talking to my friends and classmates. It's not something that is as institutionalized in our education system as, say, history or math or English. It's something that you kind of have to seek out and find on your own. And one of the main ways that you do this is through talking with your friends. I know personally, I wouldn't know what the fuck queer meant if it wasn't for my friends. I wouldn't know that I was trans if it weren't for my girlfriend at the time describing her experiences of dysphoria and of feeling out of place in your own body. And her being like, hey, do you feel that? And I'm like, oh shit, yeah, yeah, I do. But it's, you need to learn from each other. You need to learn from other queer people that you are lucky enough to call your friends, because there's no other space for us to learn these things, for us to learn the nuances of identity, for us to learn how to medically transition if that is something that someone requires or wants. You're not taught that. And so you need to learn it from your friends. And queer community then also becomes a method of survival, right? Queerness is inherently lonely. And then these friendships, not only do you learn from each other, but they're intrinsically important for queer survival and queer acceptance, queer liberation, queer celebration. Because the fact of the matter is we live in a world where a lot of people don't want us to exist, that think of us as freaks of nature, as wrong, as sinners. And that shit hurts. That shit makes you feel incredibly lonely. Because if you don't have those queer friendships to lean back on, and you're just hearing how much the world hates you for something that you can't change about yourself. It is incredibly lonely. It is incredibly isolating to be in a space where people don't understand your experiences. And I wish that that wasn't the case, but it is for so many people. I know when I was coming to terms with my queerness way back, I think I saw someone use they them pronouns on Tumblr, of course, back in like 2012, 2013 when I was in middle school. And I was like, oh shit, you can do that? But I wasn't in a space where I had community. I didn't even really have any close friends that I lived near during that point in time. And so not only was I just lonely in the I'm a middle schooler, I have no friends sort of way that being in middle school is hell. Not only was that, but I was also coming to starting to come to terms with my queerness, and I didn't have anybody to talk about that with. I didn't have a group of friends that I could be like, hey, do you want to kiss girls sometimes? Because I want to kiss girls sometimes. Hey, sometimes do you not want your boobs? Do you sometimes want a deeper voice and facial hair? I couldn't talk about that. And that was not until I moved and came back to my hometown and found my group of friends. And then I was able to have that community, that queer community, even though we were all little tiny baby gays and trying to figure out our place in the world, we were still able to have that community of sharing our stories and our experiences and helping each other, trying to pick apart the little parts of our identity that we were like, what is going on there? What do I do about this? And there's a line in the paper that really speaks to me. It's the line is, for her, these queer friendships were the difference between dying and clinging to life. And that resonates with me personally a lot. If it were not for my group of queer friends, for my partner that I had during high school, I don't know if I would be on this planet anymore. I was an incredibly depressed and dysphoric young teen from many, many untreated health, both mental and physical conditions. But if it were not for my friends and knowing that I could go be gay at school and be unapologetically queer at school and have people respect my name and my pronouns at school, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. It scares me to think about not having that community and not having that connectiveness with other gay people, with other queer people, with other trans people. If I wasn't T for T, right? If I didn't have the group of friends that I have now, if I didn't have my community, where would I be? And I feel like that's a common experience for queer people, is that loneliness, is that desperately clinging on to other queer people, to other gay people, to other bi people, to other trans people, to other lesbians. Because oftentimes, we're all each other has, and that's terrifying, but it is also comforting. It's comforting to know that even if it's nebulously somewhere out there, there's another gay person who has similar experiences to me. There's a community of us who have bonded under this shared oppression, this shared fear of violence, of not being able to be authentic. But it's important to recognize, though, that that's not all we bond over, that it's fucking awesome to be queer. It is so fantastic for me to be able to go out there and be unapologetically myself. But I wouldn't have been able to get to that point if it were not for the relationships that I have created, the friendships, the romantic partnerships that I have created over the years with other queers. It scares me to think about where I would be without my community. What else did I want to talk about? I went on a tangent. The narrative that is told throughout this paper is one of coming to terms with identity and coming to terms with authenticness and being able to take those steps because of your community. There's this motif that is present throughout the paper about nothing lasting forever. The first time it is mentioned is in the context of Italo having to go back to her family that is not necessarily accepting or understanding of her quote-unquote more feminine traits. And this is on page 354 of the reading, if you have access to it. It says, nothing lasts forever, especially if you are queer, and her happiness was interrupted. And this is the first time we see that motif, and it's sad. It's sad to think about, oh, this happiness that she was able to have in this house is gone. And there's this change that happens, and change is scary. I know, I am terrified of change. But it leaves us with this sad taste in our mouth as the reader. But then it flips the script at the end of the paper. It says, the queer pedagogy of friendship working here has only one certainty. Nothing lasts forever, especially if you love queers. And that is on page 363 of the reading. And that word love is so vital. It is so vital to love other queers, to love yourself as a queer person, to love and accept your identity, even though it is terrifying to come to terms with it. It's so important to feel loved by other people who know what you're going through, who know what it's like to be in a society, but to live in a society that currently is legislating against you. If we want to bring it into a US current political context, is legislating against you and does not want you to have rights. It's important to have little strongholds where love is the most important thing, and loving others and loving yourself, no matter what, no matter gay, trans, queer, non-binary, two-spirit, to have those people, it's more important now than ever to feel love and to connect